Hey guys, welcome back to Real Estate Today. Craig, Mike, and myself, we have a lot of topics we're covering. Here's what we're hitting today. Number one, we're talking about price corrections. Are they coming? What's going to cause them? And if so, why? We're going to then jump into the next topic we're going to hit is the lack of inventory. It's a big problem in the industry right now for agents and for buyers and sellers because it's creating unique market dynamics. Then we're going to go right into the fact of the difference between smart people and not smart people. I mean, like, why are smart buyers actually buying real estate and trading and moving up and moving around in the marketplace right now? And then we're going to hit on the actual threats, the real threats that is causing affordability issues in the market. So pay attention. Tag a friend needs to hear this one and enjoy the podcast. All right, so we've got a really interesting market right now. And what we're bringing to you is the four topics we just previewed you for. And we're hearing a lot of buzz, right? And we're not getting a lot of help from the media, right? The media does what they do, which is not just instill fear in people. So what we're actually seeing now is we're seeing adjustments in prices, which fuels the media to misinterpret what's happening in many of them. And headlines are, oh my gosh, are there price corrections coming? Is the market going to crash? What's going on? This feels like it did before. So let's talk about it, guys. Are price corrections on
For a
the way?
second. It's not just the media. I want to blame the media, but it's also the public access to information right now. I walk my dog every morning and I talk to my neighbors and they know, hey Craig, did you see that house just sold? And I'm like, no. They know before I know. And I'm a real estate broker with 500 agents. They know what happens in my neighborhood before I do because they're getting alerted by Zillow or Realtor.com or Redfin or whatever it is. So the neighbors are hearing this stuff too. And they're saying, oh my God, they lowered that price. Are prices falling? No, it was overpriced in the first place. It never should have been there in the first place. But so it's not only the media, it's the public access to the internet information and misunderstanding and misinterpreting what's happening in market dynamics. So I just want to make that point.
Yeah. And people talk and they spread their ideas and rumors. I mean, we had one sale just right down the street from me the other day, and I heard it sold for three different prices than it actually sold for from different neighbors all on the same day. And so I mean, but the good thing is people are talking. But let's talk about are prices going to correct, which means fall, because there's a ton of buyers out there waiting and hoping and praying that the market's going to adjust so they can afford homes again, and because when the prices fall, they can buy in again. This is the conventional wisdom of it too. So let's talk about it because the supply and the demand side. Let's talk about what we're seeing out there.
Well,
Well,
I
I think there's a difference though between falling and just a correction in price too, right? If you completely overpriced the property because the sellers were adamant, even though the agent probably knew it was too high for what the market would bear at that time, that particular market. And that's the other distinction. There is really no market, right? It's all about that street, that neighborhood, that sub market, and every sub market's going to have different impacts. But if I overpriced a house by 30 grand and then I correct that by 30 grand, that price didn't fall $30,000, right? It was a true correction. So there is a difference in my mind between a correction and prices falling. But yes, supply and demand rules all. However, there are some other factors that I think do play into that because supply is super low in most submarkets. And I think it's going to continue to be that way because if any client comes to me with a 2 or 3% interest rate that they've gotten over the last few years and tells me they want to sell their house, I'm probably going to advise them not to do that. Now, that doesn't mean they shouldn't go buy something, but it probably does mean that we should take a hard look at how much equity do we have? Can we rent this instead and use it as an income generating thing and still go buy the new property, right? So that should be something and is something that most current homeowners are going to do that have a very affordable rate right now. And so if that's the case, that means there's less inventory. Less inventory typically would mean that prices, because supply is low, so prices are going to stay the same or go up, not necessarily fall. But the interest rates will cause there to be caps for a lot of buyers where they're just not going to be able to afford it. So that's the real thing which I'm sure Craig can hit on, is really, it's more so affordable housing.
Yeah, well, a real life example. My daughter, bought a house 4 years ago for, let's just make up numbers, 200 grand. Now it's worth 400 grand, and she wants to buy a $600,000 house. And I said, do not sell this house. Right? It's going to rent. It's going to cash flow, but she needs the down payment to buy the more expensive home. So she has to sell this house to get the cash to put down on the new house. Right? So it's a double-edged sword. I want her to keep that house because it'll make $1,000 a month, and that would make her mortgage payment over here way less. But she doesn't have enough cash, like most people, to make the extra big down payment on the $600,000 house. So she's going to sell the little house with the fixed rate mortgage, but she's going to take the cash, and she made the choice to have a lifestyle choice and upgrade to what she wants to do. Right? So it's all about personal choices.
Well, she's in a good position because she's able to do that. What a lot of people are. But let's go to the overarching issue on this one. In order to have a falling market, we need two things, right? You need demand to drop, right? And we've got a couple things, Mike, you just pointed out. Affordability causes demand to drop. I mean, the desire doesn't drop, but the ability to pull the trigger and purchase is stopping because you have a debt to income ratio when you're financing, and you can only afford what you can afford. And a lot of times the prices are outpacing incomes, and people just can't simply afford to live in those neighborhoods anymore, right? So that's how demand will be forced to drop, okay? But that's not enough to cause a big problem. The other thing that causes a big problem that we saw before, and this is what I keep reminding people of, there's no way we're going to have a big drop in prices because if the only way we can have it is to have a huge drop in demand and a huge increase in supply, right? Huge increase. And we had that before. We had a huge increase in supply because the economy went to hell, right? Mortgage failures were left and right rampant. Equity was non-existent. And people just said, I give up. There's no sense for me trying to keep this house. You can have it, bank, right? And they just flooded the banks back with these homes and oversupply, very low demand, disaster, right? And what do we have today? We have still the desire to buy, but affordability is a problem. But because affordability is a problem, that creates the problem that we have no supply. Because Jessica's one of the ones who's still moving around, and there's still 5 million, 5 million people will move around this year, which is fewer than the 6 million people who moved around last year. So we're going to have definitely a drop in number of transactions, but there's no way we're going to see a major correction unless we have an external force, some black swan event that takes down the entire economy, shuts down businesses, people lose their jobs, and they can't pay their bills anymore, which forces a supply. Highly unlikely that that's going to happen.
I like what we talked about at the manager meeting on Monday. There's a million fewer home sales, right?
Headline.
So there's 1 million fewer home sales. Well, let's break that down. Let's chunk it down, if you will. There's 50 states. That's 200,000 sales per state. Florida has 67 counties. So if there's going to be 200,000 fewer sales in Florida, which is not a good state to use as an example, and to divide that by 67 counties, I think it's 255 fewer sales per county. You can do the math if you want.
Yeah.
It's pretty close. I'm sorry. That's a bad month for us, right? We could shut down for a month and not do any sales and take up the entire lack of sales for the entire state based on the lack of sales for 2023.
It's not just the real estate headlines, right? It's headlines in general. It's, oh my God, Amazon cut 2,000 jobs. That must mean that we're headed to, everyone's going to start losing their job. And then you look at it and you say, yeah, they did cut 2,000, but they hired 1 million people during COVID because everyone and their mother was at home shopping on Amazon and they needed more people. So they added 1 million people. Now people are going back to work. Sure. Do they need all million people? No. And so they cut 2,000 jobs. But when you look at the overarching amount of people they employ, it's a fraction, right? But they use these numbers and they use these situations, and so it's a all-encompassing effect, though, right? Because if thoughts become things. If I'm going to sit there and constantly read things like that and then look at the housing and then look at this, I'm starting to piece a puzzle together in my head, my uninformed head or misinformed head that says, oh my God, these factors are all leading to 2008 again. And it's not true in the slightest, right? But that's why we're encouraging our agents to be out there talking with their clients and having real conversations and being the advisors that we've trained them to be, because this is a time where you really need to make smart decisions. And a smart decision may be do not sell your house, sit tight, and you're good. It may be sit tight, keep the house, use the equity to go buy something else. It may be the time where in certain markets there are really good deals. I got called yesterday and another house in Ohio. That's where I've been looking. Chris and I both have been doing that. And so the agent there called me yesterday, said, hey, I've got a house. Guy needs out. He's willing to sell it for 99 grand. It's already got a tenant paying $1,200 a month in rent. Do you want it?
Yep.
So there's good deals out there, right? And then it's a simple math equation. Does that $1,200 make me money every month? If it does, maybe it's worth it. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. So I've got to start making, and everyone's got to make strategic decisions based on the lifestyle they want to live. In the same way Jessica had to really sit down and say, I really lifestyle-wise want to be there. Is that worth the additional cost that I'm going to have right now? And if the answer to that is yes, and she's going to do it. If the answer to that is no, then no. If life is happening, if you're getting relocated, you're having a baby, you had a death in the family, like there's all these things that are going to happen that are going to cause you to make decisions. But that doesn't mean that you have to make a rash decision either. There's a lot of options still out there. And that's where you need to talk to your real estate agent, who's hopefully your advisor, and make some smart ones.
Right. And then if you are one of the ones who is waiting for a quote unquote deal, you need to look and just figure out where is supply going to come from, right? Where are you going to get an influx of supply from? So let's go through a couple things. Home builders, right? Are home builders going to stop overbuild? Can they overbuild right now?
No, the banks won't let them.
They will if history repeats itself, but it's going to take a long time for them to catch up with the demand, right? And typically they have lagging data, as a lot of big companies do, and they'll overbuild. But that's probably years from now when they have a little bit more extras, right? So that's unlikely that supply is going to come from there.
Well, no, that's that because no, the bank. I was on the board of a bank. They're not going to recreate. They did that already. They overfunded builders in the past, and they got their shorts handed to them. They're not doing that again. The demographics, actually, more than that, it's the county. I'm doing a project right over here, and sorry, we don't have enough school capacity. You can't build. There's just so much in the way to keep things from growing too fast that it's automatically going to slow things down. So you're not going to have an oversupply of the builders would suck it up if they could, but the banks won't let them.
Well,
And
sorry.
the county won't let them.
Then sorry for your luck if you're waiting for home builders to overbuild. So there's that one.
Exactly.
Next one. How are you going to get a mass foreclosure event? That's what a lot of people are still waiting for, right?
Ain't going to happen.
Why not?
Because there's too much equity. So yes, it's going to happen. People are going to hit delinquencies. So understand, here's the process. You miss a payment, your credit gets dinged. You miss another payment, your credit gets dinged. You miss another payment, your credit gets dinged again. Now you go into default and your loan balance balloons. So you got to pay the entire balance off or the bank's going to take your home. Right?
Yep.
But put an S on my chest, Superman comes and the real estate agent comes in and says, shit, you only owe 200. A house is worth 400. Let's put it on the market at 375, blow it out. We'll put 75 grand in your pocket. You sell the house and you're not foreclosed on. Now you went delinquent, but you're not going to get foreclosed on if you talk to a real estate person, because you will get foreclosed on if you don't. They will take your house, but you can sell it, put cash in your pocket. But now the problem is you got no credit because you let yourself get in the position where you didn't make your payment on time and no bank's going to lend you money anymore. So now you become a renter, right? You get cash in your pocket. You didn't foreclose on, but you're in default and your credit got shot. And that's what's going to be the problem. So we're not going to see a foreclosure crisis. We're going to see a delinquent crisis. And let's talk about delinquencies. Why are delinquencies going to happen? Mark my words right now. When your insurance comes due to renew, one of two things are going to happen. You're going to be canceled or you're going to be doubled. I've seen it. Everybody I've talked to has confirmed you're going to be canceled or you're going to be doubled. So if you're paying $2,000 a year for insurance, you're going to four. Or your insurance company says, we're not renewing you because of whatever. That's what's going to happen. So now a normal homeowner who qualified for their loan with $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month year insurance, now they've got a $4,000 a year insurance. Well, that's an extra $200 a month about. And if you can't afford that, you're going to have to stop buying Starbucks or something because that payment is there. And then we got property taxes, and heaven, thank goodness for Florida's laws for taxes. We can't go up more than 3% a year if we're homesteaded. But taking an investor, like I've got some investment properties, my taxes are doubling. They went from 4,000 to 8,000 because my house went from 200 to 400.
Yeah.
Right. So now my taxes are doubled. My insurance is doubled. My PITI, my principal, interest, taxes, insurance makes up my mortgage payment. Right. So now I've got an extra $1,000 a month in payments, which what am I going to do with that? I'm going to pass it along to the tenant, right? So now the tenant's got to pay an extra $1,000 a month because I got to pay an extra $1,000 a month. So if the tenant has to leave, then I got a problem and I got to make the payment. So I'm going to have to sell that house or do something different. So that's where supply is going to come from. And that's where we direct agents.
But it's not a mass. It's not a mass event. You're going to have some one-offs here and there of people that are having getting the squeeze. And
Right.
Imagine if you lost your job at the same time your tax bill doubled and your insurance company said, hey, your roof has 8 years left and we require 15 years. So you need to put a $6,000 roof on and your numbers are doubled and your taxes are up and you just lost your job. Right. I mean,
where do you get a $6,000 roof from, by the way? I've never heard of that.
Right.
Oh, for your shed?
Right. Right. Well, you get the point, though. I mean, when those things happen, it's unfortunate, but we see it, guys, and that's so. If you're a buyer waiting, so oh man, there's going to be so many. So, but here, let's say that scenario happens, and poor Bob and Mary just had life kick him in the, you know what's, right, and everything hit them at one time, and they can't keep their house anymore. They're going to sell it, but to Craig's point, they've got equity. So if you're sitting there saying, "Oh, I'm going to get 40%, 40 cents on the dollar, I'm going to go pick it up like my uncle Eddie did in 2007," it ain't going to happen. It's just not going to happen because they're going to sell it on the open market and have equity and move on. So, we had a client literally come in here yesterday. There was a house that was $650,000, and they actually came in and talked to one of the agents, and I heard them sitting right here, and they wanted to put the offer in at $500,000. Right? In what world would that make any sense? Well, it needs a new kitchen and stuff on it. Okay. It's not going to happen. So they were under the impression that it's been on the market for a couple months. So therefore they were desperate and they would take $150,000 price reduction when it's just nuts. So it doesn't. So when that seller wants to sell, they'll just adjust their price a little bit and it'll sell. Right. So you don't have those market trends right now.
No, I just want to comment on that because, my personal Gmail account has ads on it. My corporate Gmail account doesn't. And ads I get all the time are OfferPad. We want to buy your house. People, please. The open market is where you want to be. You want to be placed in the competitive bidding environment. Do not take one of these off-the-shelf offers that just, I'll give you this for your house. Yes, you'll make money. But if you put it on the competitive bidding environment, we'll make you more money. And that's what we do. It's really just, it's crazy how these companies like Open Door and OfferPad just come in and try to snake you into here's an offer. Of course, you're going to make money on it because it's worth more than it was. But if you don't put it on the open competitive bidding environment, you're going to get less than you deserve. Now, and I'll tell you, we're going to counsel you to clean it up and do all that stuff. And if you can't, then those options are good. But talk to a real estate professional before you take that advice.
Yep.
Or that offer.
All right. So a mass foreclosure event's not likely, right? So if you're holding on for that, it's not going to happen. So how about investors? So I'm reading some things that's the potential. It depends on the investor, right? If somebody bought this rental house, right? And they're squeaking out $400 a month positive cash flow, and they're like, yeehaw, right? And that tenant loses their job and can't pay. Not only do they not have that $400 cash flow, they're eating that mortgage payment and that $400, right? That's happening. So if that investor was really tight, just squeaking by, and they go 2 or 3 months like that with a bad tenant in a foreclosure process, or the factory shut down that employs most of the people in that neighborhood, and 6 other houses are coming on the market, that specific market could have an issue, right? But it's not a big issue. So it is a possibility with some of them. Now during COVID, everybody got in this Airbnb craze, right? And everywhere, every city, Airbnbs, VRBOs, additional dwelling units, right? It's a huge buzz thing going on. Because why? The United States was trapped inside of the United States, and people were moving around to have different experiences to not lose their minds, right? So they were going everywhere, and it sounded good, and everyone bought Airbnbs, and it still went well. And then all of a sudden, when the world woke up, I mean, in my Instagram feeds or Facebook and look through the stuff, I mean, everybody in the planet is in Europe, right, or in the Caribbean, or traveling around and doing things around which they never have before. So every time somebody goes to Europe for 2 weeks, they're not somebody's VRBO in Chicago, right, or going to a wedding in there. So you're seeing that some pockets, VRBOs, and non-super tourist-driven markets are going to have some problems. So, and if somebody bought that because they relied on that Airbnb income to pay their mortgage payment, and that income starts to dry up, they may hit that 30 days, 60 day, 90 days, and if they can't suck it up, they will give those houses back. Now that won't
Well,
be a foreclosure event.
you're also seeing legal changes, right? With that, you
Yes,
have a
you are.
lot of counties, a lot of cities saying no more, right? We're not going to allow VRBOs. A lot of HOAs here. I've seen homes get sold. We had one issue in our neighborhood where our CDD does not allow you to do it. You can't do short term rentals like that, right? So you're on a minimum 12-month rental if you want to do it. Well, someone bought a house, didn't check, tried using it as an Airbnb and got shut down. Well, guess what? Couldn't afford it without that rental income coming in. So guess what hit the market right away? That house, right? And they probably ended up losing money on it because it was such a short deal for them.
Yep.
And it's a shame, right? When you have bad agents who aren't doing their job, this can happen. But you're seeing these changes happen a lot. I mean, we were talking to a C21 broker not long ago in Hawaii. And what's going on in Hawaii, right? All these people had these massive Airbnbs, and then all the hotel resorts said, wait a minute, we want them staying in our resort. They have a lot of money. They started hiring all these lobbyists to come in and change the laws to say, guess what? In Hawaii now, in a lot of places, Airbnb, you have to stay a minimum of 30 days, right? Well, they're pricing them out of the market. So that's the way they're basically forced to go stay at a resort. And this is happening all over the place. So sudden law change could create a little bit of an influx of properties. But again, we're talking about a small amount. And given the amount of inventory, that shortage that we have, that is not going to correct it, right? And that's the bigger point here, is that these little micro things create some bubbles, they create some opportunities, but they're not going to solve the problem.
Right. The last I heard was municipalities are saying, okay, you could do short-term rentals, but it's a $20,000 license fee.
Yeah, all sorts of things.
Add a $20,000 license fee to a short-term rental for annually, it changes your cash flow.
Yep.
And in my neighborhood, they're pouncing. They're talking about considering a rule change here, that if you do it illegally, it's a $10,000 fine, like they're doing in Hawaii. $10,000. That'll wipe out some earnings pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
There. So the point is, none of these little things are going to create any huge opportunities, because for supply and demand to actually work, you have to have a major drop in demand and a huge increase in supply. And we're not going to see anything that's going to do the both of those things. So to that point, especially I'm looking at a graphic right now with the median days on market for the closed homes, right? Our median days on the market right now is below 30. Right, last year was 35. The year before that, well, crazy COVID, was about where we are right now. And then before that, it was 45, 50 days on the market. We're now below 30 average days on the market, which is a huge, huge telling feat that there is huge demand and very little supply. So for those thinking sky's falling from an inventory perspective, it's just not.
That's the definition of a seller's market.
That's right.
30, I mean, a balanced market is considered 6 months supply of homes. I've been a broker for a long time. We take 6-month listing agreements because homes typically take 6 months to sell. To sell in 30 days, and we're still, if we get a good house, it's on the market, it gets multiple offers, and it's going above full price. If we get a not good house, I don't know how you define that, but you know, I can define it if you want me to. It'll be on the market 3, 4, 5 months, and it'll go through staged price reductions until the public says, right? Markets. What's a house worth, Jeff?
What are buyers willing to pay based on whatever else is available to them the day they decide to buy?
That's the definition, right? And that's
And it
our
changes
job.
daily
And it changes daily.
based on
And
supply and
if
demand.
I put my house on the market for $500,000 and a prettier one comes on the market for 450, it's going to sell and mine's not.
Right.
That's just it.
So the answer to the question is a big price correction coming. The answer is no, based on the facts we're presenting.
Now, let's talk about this because this is just a story I like to tell because it takes analysis, right? And it was one of our agents. There's a house in my neighborhood that came on the market for $1,750,000, and it was $600 a foot. And you can destroy this in a minute. $600 a foot, which is high. My neighbor's like $400 a foot. And my agent said the buyer just doesn't feel comfortable paying $600. We love the house, but it's $600 a foot. Price per square foot means nothing. Absolutely nothing. This is a 3,000 square foot house. It's beautiful. It's on a huge cul-de-sac lot on the water with a view of the bay. It's got 180 feet of waterfront. It's got a new seawall. It's got a new dock. It's got a covered boat lift, right? I said, okay, let's analyze this another way. So it's a $400 square foot house. That's what the neighborhood comps are. 3,000 times 4 is it's $1.2 million. So that's what you want to offer. But this lot is a premium. You're not going to get another cul-de-sac lot with a dock and a new seawall. So let's add $200,000 for a lot premium. So $1.2 million is now $1.4 million. This house also has a 3,000 square foot garage on the first floor. Now that's not worth $400 a foot, but let's say it's worth $100 a foot. There's another $300,000. So we did those things and we built it up to, oh my God, this house is worth $1,750,000, and it did sell in 3 days for $1,750,000. But here's what's going to happen: an agent from out of the market is not going to know any of this. They're going to come to this neighborhood, they're going to get this listing, and they're going to say, hey, the last sale went for $600 a foot, so let's put it on the market for $600 a foot. But it doesn't have a 3,000 square foot garage, and it doesn't have a new seawall. It's not a cul-de-sac. It's not looking at the sunset. It doesn't have a new dock with a covered boat lift. So it's going to sell on the market at, another 3,000 square foot house, $600 a foot, $1.8 million, and it's not going to sell. So what are they going to do? They're going to lower the price. And what are the neighbors going to say? Oh my God, the market's soft. They have to lower the price to get the house sold. It's going to lower it again and again and again. And it's going to come back to market value, which is $400 a foot. So it's $1.2 million.
Or worse than that, the
They
buyer
bought it for $800. It's worth $1.2 million. They made $400,000. They were trying to get greedy, right? And that's what happens. There's weak agents and there's greedy sellers, and they don't take into account what the market is doing. And that's what we spend our time teaching our agents to do, is study the market, not the greed of the seller or the misinformation of the agent.
I feel bad for the buyer, right? The next buyer in that marketplace who flies in town from Ohio and has a bad agent who doesn't know the marketplace, that's cash, and says, well, the last one sold for $700 a foot. It's on the same street. Well, okay, there you go, right? And that could easily happen, and I've seen that happen before, right? So
let me tell you this story. I don't think I've even told you this one. I've got 2 agents that are going to take over a neighborhood. and they want to learn it. So I put them on the boat and I took them for a boat ride. And when I took them for a boat ride, I ran aground. I had to raise my engines to get into the neighborhood because the canal that goes into that neighborhood, it is so shallow there. I actually grinded my props on the oyster beds, and it wasn't low tide, right? So that was one thing. And then we went around the corner. Once we got in, I raised my engines. We went around, and this other street, I couldn't get there. I got to 1.6 feet of water, and I couldn't go any further. But if I looked ahead of me, there were beautiful waterfront homes with docks and boats on lifts that if I was an agent from out of the area that didn't have any knowledge, I would look at that and say, oh my God, this is a waterfront house. They got a dock, they got a boat. This is great. But you can only put it in at high tide. Well, high tide doesn't last that long. So you can go in and out. If you miss high tide, you can't get back to your house. So, wow, the local knowledge that an agent brings, if they know their stuff, is huge.
Yep.
But an out of town agent showing that house would say, oh, that's a waterfront house, great. Right? I don't know if that was a good example or not, but it just shocked me. A normal person would say, oh, this is a boatable canal. No, it's got 1.6 feet of water. I can't even float my boat in 1.6 feet of water.
Yep.
With my engines up. And then I have to use a pole to pull it out. So
That's good points. Let's talk about lack of inventory issues. Right, second topic of the day.
okay.
Right, and there's a graphic here that we're putting up. You guys can take a look at, and it's interesting because this is active listings, and for the state of Florida, right? Because that's where we operate in the whole state, and it's got the month of June is this one of 2018 versus 2023. So this year versus 2018. Interesting stat because we didn't have COVID. We didn't have anything weird. We didn't have any of those blips in the marketplace. It was
Let's
a
call
normal market.
normal. Right.
Normal. Right? Normal market.
Graph you have on the sheet, by the way.
In 2023, we have a post-pandemic deal. This is not normal. Right? Let's all understand that this is not normal. We are coming out of the most non-normal time any of us have ever experienced in our entire lives. Right? We had a global economic shutdown. We had literally every economy printing trillions of dollars just to keep their people alive with nobody knowing what was going to happen. And then we had inflation go out of control and interest rates forced to be raised up out of control to try to curb inflation that was out of control so we don't have a total global economic meltdown. And we're now stuck in that problem while it sorts itself out, looking at right down the barrel at 8% interest rates to date this, right? And it's not good. And we don't know if we're going to be able to go back down to the 5s and 6s or go up to the 9s or 10s. Honestly, nobody here knows that. It all depends on the future data of what's going on with inflation in the markets. So here we are. But let's look at where we are, 2018 versus 2023. So we'll look at the major demographic market areas in the state of Florida, for example. We have offices down in Miami and Tampa. We got agents all the way around, right? So Orlando. So the Miami market, 58% fewer listings. 58% fewer listings this year than in 2018 when a normal market. So what in the world is causing that? Let me hit some other numbers, and then we'll talk about the cause and effects of that. Tampa Bay region is showing 34 to 38% fewer listings on the market. I'm not talking about sales. I'm talking about fewer. What's that?
From a normal market.
From a normal market. And then even for Naples, Fort Myers areas, 24 to 45% fewer homes on the market. Now, it's just Jacksonville's 26% fewer markets. Up in the Panhandle, it's 16 to 23% fewer markets. And you've got a couple anomalies, like the Ocala area is even, right? But that's just from the deal. But most of them are dramatic. 30 to 50% fewer is a big, big number. So let's talk about cause and effect of that.
Well, call it what it is. The top markets have filled up. There's no more. Look at Pinellas County. How much vacant land do you have in Pinellas County?
We're the only fully developed county in the entire state of Florida, the most densely populated county in the entire state of Florida. There's
So
nothing.
all you can do is tear something down and build something new,
That's right. Yep. The
right?
roads, the waters, the schools, the infrastructure, everything's here. We don't have the problems with the developing counties, right? We just have concurrency issues with just making sure all the infrastructure is
Miami's the same way. Miami is they can't go further west because the Everglades are there and there's a
yep.
swamp, right? So the most popular areas are full, and
Yep.
that's why they're more expensive,
But no
right?
one's
So
putting their houses on the market. That's our problem. You have fewer inventory. You've got 50 to 35% fewer homes on the market than we did in a normal market. That's our problem, guys. That's our problem, because we've got buyers who are being squeezed from their payments, and there's very little for them to choose in, because if Mike and Courtney live in their home and their interest, they have a 3.75% interest rate, and their home is good, right? Yeah, maybe she might want a better kitchen or a nicer backyard, but it's great the way that it is. It's certainly not intriguing to go spend 8%, trade your 3.75% interest rate for an 8% interest rate. They're just going to say no. It's not even going to come up in dinner conversations. It's not even an option at all.
no, they'll put a new kitchen in
Well, yeah, that's what I was just about to
for
say.
30.
That's what we've done in the last this year alone. I've spent an ungodly amount of money on the house because we made the decision. Hey, we're here until the kids at least graduate and leave, right? Because in my particular neighborhood, in our area, this area where I live, it's heavily predicated on schools, right? Most of the people here are young families, and the schools dictate values. If you're in one of the top schools here, you're going to pay a premium to live there. The houses appreciate faster, everything. So we're where we want to be from a school perspective. So we decided to stay. So what happens? To your point, we said, well, there's a few homes here. We buy that one, we buy that one. Well, those aren't for sale. All right, you know what? We'll just do what we want to our house. So in this year alone, we got a new roof, we bought new ACs, we installed new water system, new plumbing, redid the whole entire master bath, updated the kids, like everything. We're about to redo the floors through the whole house. Like basically, we built a new house.
Yep.
We said, all right, we're just going to be here and we'll invest in this property, and there's so much equity sitting in it. We'll just continue to do what we want, and we'll just do it here until we're ready to go.
And this is all happening when we have the largest segment of home buyers than have ever been in the history of the real estate industry, right? You've got the millennials hitting their peak home buying years at this moment in time.
And Mike did that without any money because his house paid for itself. There's a home equity line of credit that did all that. So all he did was buy the house, sleep in it. It went up in value. He borrowed against it and upgraded it. I'm doing the same thing, right? My home equity line of credit is redone my entire home. So my home is paying for itself. You can't do that when you rent.
Nope.
I just had to say that.
But that's the issue that we have right now. Active listings. They're just down, 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 which is forcing the new home builders. But to your point, you can't build any new homes here. We don't have any land. So we're different because it's not driven by school district and families. Too, we're driven by tourism and the beaches, right? So from our marketplace, so that's still a good driver.
Yeah, but you're buying buildings and knocking them down and rezoning them, which takes time.
Correct.
And then you got to construct it, which takes 2 friggin' years.
Correct.
So we're not going to get out of an inventory. There's no influx of inventory coming.
It's getting worse too, because there's a couple of projects that we're actually going to slow down on and stop. Because when you look at the financing costs, it takes 4 or 5% off of the bottom line, which was in a lot of times is the profit margin, right? So why build? So I know several people that are stopping projects right now because they're like, why? It just doesn't make any sense to do it right now. We'll just wait.
And not only that, but like in my area, right, there is still some land around. They're still building. They're still adding homes. There's a big lagoon, another second lagoon community being built right now. So that, though, while great and will add inventory, it's also has a tendency to decrease in listing inventory, because if I'm advising a seller who's about to sell and literally right next door is new inventory, they're competing with new inventory now, right? And so that's the other thing. So now you have a lot of people that say, I was going to sell, but at the price I'd have to be at to compete with that brand new house that's going right there, I'll stay. So you do get the influx of new here, but you're also getting a lot of older homes that are saying, you know what, no, I'll stay. I have a good interest rate. I'm not competing with new construction. I'm good. And so you also lose some inventory on that side of things. So it's a challenge. It's a major issue.
Well, I think that when there's for the agents listing resale homes where there's new home construction, it's a challenge because the seller sees that new home sold for 385. But what they don't know is there was a bonus commission to the selling agent. They bought the interest rate down to 5.9%, and they paid $10,000 in closing costs. So yes, it's closed at 389, but it really was a net close at 369. So the seller sees a 389 sales price, so they want 389, but they don't realize that the buyer only paid 369 because there were incentives involved.
Yep.
And it takes a smart agent to educate a seller that just because a builder sold for 389 doesn't mean that the house is worth 389, because there were so many things involved: buying down interest rates, paying closing costs, paying bonus commissions. They're not going to sell. Yes, they bought the house, they put a new
It's a
fence.
tough thing to compete with, right? Outside of timeline, that's your only really saving grace. Is if the house isn't going to be built for a while, maybe
Right.
you find a buyer who needs to be in faster, right? So timeline is where you can compete, but it's not an easy battle if you want to compete with new.
No, and the builders are smart. I've talked to them. I know most of them. They say, we're not even putting the house on the market until it's 30, 60 days out from completion.
Yeah.
It's just like a normal resale. They don't put it on the market until it's almost ready to sell. Now, you don't get to pick the carpet or the tile or the cabinets. They do all that for you now. It's just like a resale. You're going to get what's there.
Yep.
That's how they do it. And it's crazy. And there's a 400 unit community right over here. I mean, it's almost done. It's basically sold out. They release 20 lots at a time. The houses are basically complete. The color's been picked, the paint job, everything's been done. They're not messing around. They know what they're doing.
And because there's some lack of inventory in a lot of places too, you see a lot of the build to rent communities coming in now too, which is why Warren Buffett just entered into the new home building department. If you look at if you follow the whole breadcrumbs, right, to go buy into Lennar, right, and DR Horton and the other ones that Devasta, thank you. That's a huge cash investment, and a lot of those people are buying communities, building them, and just simply renting them out. Right?
Well, the fact that's the only solution to the supply problem is new homes, and the new homes have to go. They can't. You either got to buy an old house and tear it down, which is custom, or you got to go out to Parish or someplace where there's vacant land and build a subdivision.
But we were talking about that yesterday, and a lot of people can now because of the work from home world. So you take your house, you live in Tampa, an older home, right, and it's worth $565,000, like the one you're talking about earlier, sold in Bayshore, right? For $500,000, what can you go buy in one of these new lagoon communities?
Oh my God!
Like a giant, huge land. You can go a little out in the suburbs. You can buy a few acres, get a nice house, put some chickens and stuff in it. Like you can legit do that. And if you're working from home and you're both consultants that work remotely, you're seeing a huge migration from that way too. So people are saying, well, for what I can get for my money, I'm going to cash in and start moving out, which is now putting more demand on the rural areas, which creates more issues. So we got a unique time that we're in right now, and that keeps driving supply and demand.
But there are reasons why you may want, and the smart decision may be to trade up, right? It may make sense if you don't, to your point, right? In 8 years, I'll be in that spot. If I have this house in 8 years sitting there saying, all right, we have a ton of equity still, right? House will be paid off, ton of equity, and the primary driver of this home value is the school that I no longer need, right? Because my kids will be out of it.
Yeah.
It may make sense at that time for me to cash in on that. And also just in general, if I buy a more expensive house, what typically appreciates faster?
That's where I was going. Let's talk about that.
So
A
I mean,
million
it may the smart decision may actually be to trade. And if I'm smart buyer, right, I'm going to look and say, all right, well, interest rates are up. That means my buying competition is likely down. Yes, inventory is tight, but if I find a property that I really like, now may be the time where I'm not competing against 72 other people to get that house. I'm not going to pay $100,000 over ask. I may be able to get some seller concessions. I may be able to get them to buy the rate down. But even if I can't, if I can get the house at what I truly believe it's worth right now, because I'm not having to go above ask, now I'm buying that house. It's appreciating faster because it's a more expensive house to begin with, right? So there's some advantages there, and I'm getting it in an environment. And then when the rates do, if they ever do drop, which they'll drop at some point, then I just refi but I'm taking advantage of that appreciation along the way. It could make sense. Plus, if I'm able to cash out on the equity that I have now, I put some money in the bank, or I use that money to lower my payment on that new house. That could make sense. So again, you have to run your equation and run your factors, but it could make a lot of sense to do that, and that could be a smart move for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, take a $500,000 house that goes up 5% a year, right? 5%. That's $25,000 a year. Take $1 million house that goes up to 5% a year. That's $50,000 a year.
Yeah.
It makes sense to upgrade. I mean, when you do the math of what real estate is really about, yes, it gives you a place to live, but it really builds wealth over time. And then I get to deduct my mortgage interest. I can deduct my insurance.
And here's an example where I was doing with the sales meeting and the beach agents yesterday. We were saying, all right, yes, you're going to pay higher monthly rates right now than if you were to wait for them to drop a point or two, which they will after their election and inflation gets sorted out and the Fed's going to have to restimulate. And we all know the story. It's going to have to happen. It's not going to happen this quarter, next quarter, probably not the end of this year, probably in somewhere in the next year, the year after that. So let's say it's 2 years away. And let's say I have to pay $300 extra a month for my mortgage rate right now. So $300 times 12 months, $3,600 times 2 years, $7,200, right? So, but my house has appreciated 6% a year, which is what the expectations are right now to this year because of supply and demand, all the things we've been talking about. So I'm going to get way more than that in appreciation. I'm going to still get the interest and the tax deductions, and I'm going to be able to come in now to the house that's been on the market for 63 days, and I'm going to be able to probably ask $7,200 lower, right, or get a $7,200 tax or buyer credit in any form that I want. So it's going to be a wash because I'm not competing with 87 people. I'm coming in, right? So that's why smart people are buying right now. They're saying
And
exactly,
and you're getting a house that fits your lifestyle better. Right? You're
correct.
not moving just to move. You're moving because that new house fits whatever you're looking for more
Yes,
than your current house.
that's right. So I'm
Well,
happier, and it's a smart financial decision.
this is personal. I've refinanced my house 3 times. Every time I pulled $100,000 out. So my house gave me $300,000.
Yep.
That's pretty amazing, right? What did I do with that $300,000? A lot of stuff. I took care of my house, but I also put in a new kitchen. I also bought some jet skis. I also paid down some debt. I mean, the house did everything for me, and I've got a, I don't know, 20% loan to value on my house right now. I could, and, it's amazing. You can't do that when you rent. And
Right.
when I see people rent, it just kills me, right? Because the rent, you don't get, I wrote it down on the sheet. When you have an investment property, you want to obtain a yield, right? You want to get a positive return. But that's not it. The other part is amortization. Amortization is a beautiful thing. When you have somebody else making your payment and you make your payment, your principal balance goes down. So if I own my house for 5 years, I'm paying principal down every year. At the end of 5 years, I owe a lot less than I did before. My principal balance went down. So the tenant is paying off your debt with amortization. And then there's depreciation, which is a tax incentive. So the government says, hey, you can depreciate your house over 27 years. So you take 1/27th of the value of your house, and you can take it off your income, which lowers your income taxes, which goes up. And then the fourth one is, and it's actually the least important, is appreciation. The house should be going up in value, as it usually does, as has historically over years. Now, don't expect 30% like we had over COVID, but 5% a year appreciation. So a $500,000 house is worth 525 next year, and a 525 house is worth 5% more than that next year. So you take those four components. When you look at real estate, it makes no sense.
Well, I think the key, though, is that it takes time, right? This is not an overnight thing, which is why you need to do it sooner than later, right?
It's long-term strategy, for sure.
How long have you had your house?
23 years.
Right. So in 23 years, it has produced a lot of wealth and opportunity for you. But that was because you made a really good decision and you actually took action 23 years ago. And so my thing is, if you're not now, you've got to get started. I don't care what market you're in, because right now, if I went up to most of my friends and said, hey, if you buy that $500,000 house right now, forget what you're paying for it. If you buy that $500,000 house right now, in 4 years, I'm giving you a check for $100,000 in 4 years from now, right? Or more. But on average, you're going to get a check for $100,000. Would you take that deal? Most people would say yes. If I could do something now and 4 years later, I'm still going to have that value, plus you're going to give me $100,000, most people would take that deal. You have to do the action now, because this isn't an overnight thing. This is going to take years to actually build true wealth, but you've got to get started. Because if Craig didn't buy that house 23 years ago, he's not in the same position he is now. Right? And listen, it can happen faster. Look at the increase we've had over the last 3 years. Right? But that's not normal. But it can happen. But if I didn't own my house 3 years ago, I missed out on that party.
Yep.
But because I did, I got to participate, right? So you have to I don't care what it costs to not do it. 3 years from now, you've missed out on 3 years of appreciation. You've missed out of 3 years of growth. You've missed out of 3 years of wealth building. Like, you're missing out on a massive opportunity because we're being short-sighted. But as human beings, it's hard for us to look at the big picture. But the reality is, when it comes to real estate, that's exactly what you're doing. And yes, there's short-term opportunities. You can buy flips. You can do that stuff. But generally speaking, real estate is more of a wealth builder when held long-term. But in order to hold something long-term, you actually have to buy it now.
Yeah. Yeah. No matter what the interest rate is.
Here's my message to anybody renting right now. Right. First of all, stop it.
Thank you. No, thank you.
Well, no, stop it.
No, thank you, because I own rental houses.
Yeah.
Please.
Well, you're paying somebody else's. You say you don't want a mortgage payment. You're paying somebody else's mortgage payment is what you're doing. Right. So here's the big objection. Well, I can't really get what I want to be living in right now, so that's why I'm renting. Well, then go move into your future rental house, right? Stop flushing money down the drain. Buy a house. It's not your future palace. It's not perfect. It's not what you want it to be, right? And you're building wealth and you're growing your business and you're climbing the corporate ladder. You're doing the things you need to do. You're going to get there. But stop flushing money down while you're doing that. It doesn't make any sense. Go buy a little house that you might say is a piece of crap. Go buy it and love it and make it a non-piece of crap. And then while you're building your wealth and climbing the ladder and doing all those things, you're still spending the same amount of money. Maybe you have to drive an extra 20 minutes a day. It's big whoop, right? But what you're going to do is get your depreciation on your taxes. You're going to get the appreciation. You're going to buy some wealth. You're going to have some fun. You're going to enjoy the property. It's your future rental home. Costs you the same amount as renting. Let the ego go, right? Stop it. Stop saying, oh, I need to live in that $3,000 a month apartment because it's got a movie theater. Screw that. Get Netflix from your mom's account, right? And suck it up and watch movies for a couple years and have some fun, guys. This is about getting wealthy, and you can't get wealthy in an apartment, guys.
You know what I find so funny?
What?
How many people have the desire to be an entrepreneur? A lot, right? You talk to most people.
Everybody
you'll hear them say, oh, I don't want to work for somebody, because if I work for somebody, then I'm basically paying for their dream, right? I'm helping them build their business, right? But that's not helping me. What do you think renting is doing? Right? Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur because they want their own thing. They want freedom. They want to build their own wealth. They want to do these things, right? That's the magic behind being an entrepreneur. Yet, why don't we have that same view when it comes to home ownership? What do you think you're doing when you're renting? That's the equivalent of you being an employee punching a clock.
That's why I said thank you. If you're renting, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, all you're doing is paying for somebody else's dream. You have zero freedom and flexibility. You can't use that money for anything. It's not yours. You can't really change anything if you want. Oh, you get to paint the walls. Congratulations. You're not living life on your terms, right? Which is exactly why everyone that you talk to is drawn to owning their own business. So if you have the desire to own your own business, but you're renting, I don't understand it, because those literally are conflicting each other. So I think we need to shift the culture. Owning your own business is great. Owning your own piece of real estate is even better. And you absolutely need to go make that decision right now.
The best commercial I've ever seen was Lennar Homes. And it was an attractive girl. And she was talking to what was presumed to be her boyfriend. And she was pissed at him. And she says, you know what? I'm tired of this. I want a dog. You say I can't have one. I wanted to paint the bedroom pink, and you said no. And I wanted to do this, and you said no. And then she slid the keys across the counter and gave it back to the landlord and says, I'm going to go buy a home so I can do whatever the hell I want. That's an awesome story, because that's true. You forget about that. There's pride of ownership that is really important in life. I mean, I do things to my house just because it makes me feel good, right? I plant flowers and I paint rooms and I add new things and I do this. And it's, as a couple, you get to create a vision of what you want. In an apartment, you can't do that. You can't change the carpet. You can't change to wood floor. It would be stupid to take out the carpet and put in wood floors because you wanted wood floors, because you don't own it.
Right.
But in your home, I mean, my daughter was out shopping. I called her Saturday. She was, where are you? We're at some flooring store in South Tampa, picking out the flooring for our new house. They get to choose that. That's an exciting thing when you get to pick if you want crown molding on the ceiling or wainscoting on the walls or different trim and all that stuff that you get to do, and pick your appliances. And, do you want a Wolf stove? Do you want a induction cooktop, or do you want, it's freedom. It's exciting. And most people don't know that. And that's what the millennials are starting to find out. And that's why they want to buy right now. And that's why the real estate market is going to continue, because the millennials are going, we want to own homes. My parents own homes. They got to do things. We want to do that too. And that's the biggest home segment buying section coming right now. So that's even more of a problem, because it's more demand and we don't have the supply. And what's sad is that the builders have taken the options out because they have to produce so fast. They can't wait for the consumer to say what they want. So they go in and pick what they want. And then the consumer goes in, and I've seen it happen 1,000 times. Oh, I don't like these countertops. And it just spurs on the economy, because the countertop people get to replace, they pull out whatever they didn't like and they put in new stuff. Right? I got people in my house right now. They're doing my windows because I wanted new windows. And I got to tell you, it's worth every penny that I spent, because there's people mowing in my yard right now and I can't even hear them. Before, I could hear them. It makes you feel good. So that's really it, right? Big ass smiles. That's our job. That's our job in life, to do what makes us happy and put a big ass smile on our face.
That's right.
And if you don't own a home, you're missing out on a big part of that.
Good point. Let's talk about the last topic for the day. Not a fun topic, but a realistic topic. And that is the real threats to the marketplace right now. Right. And it's affordability, but it's about the taxes, and it's about the insurance and the issues that we're having right now. So what do you see the biggest threats to people that currently own their homes right now?
Okay, well, I'm big into this because I'm the analytical in the group. I'll just make a bold statement. If you're paying if you're paying $1,000 a month for insurance right now for hazard homeowners insurance, expect to double. Right? When your policy comes to renewal, it's going to be canceled or it's going to be doubled. Period. End of story. I've seen it 1,000 times and ain't not happening. What's happened is the insurance companies have left Florida because it's been very treacherously destroyed by lawyers, and they just said, screw it, we're not insuring in Florida anymore. My personal insurance policy was $4,800 a year. It went to $10,000. I doubled my deductible and got it down to $7,000. So there are things you can do. So have a good insurance agent. My flood insurance policy is right here. It's on my desk. My flood insurance is, well, it was $1,100 a year. My new flood insurance is $7,048 a year. And then for contents, it's another $2,890. So basically $10,000 a year. But because I'm a FEMA policyholder, they're giving me a annual increase cap discount of $7,360. So what they're going to do is they're going to increase my premium 18% a year until I reach that $10,000 number. That's big. So you take a normal person, you got to qualify. It's basically 28% of your income can go to your mortgage payment, and 36% of your income can be all of your debts combined. So when you qualify for your loan, you qualified at those levels. But when your insurance goes up $300 a month, it knocks your rates out, your qualification out, and you wouldn't qualify for that same house. So now you got a problem. You got an extra $300 a month in insurance you got to pay. And if you're in a flood insurance area, you're really screwed. So that's going to hurt. And then taxes. Please, everybody listening, if you own a home, file for homestead exemption, period. It's so sad. One of my neighbors bought her house in 2016 for $600,000, and they did not homestead. And we had a conversation. I told her about homestead, and they went and homesteaded. But now her basis is $1.2 million because her house doubled, like everybody's house has doubled in the last 3 years. So now she's got a tax basis of $1.2 million, which is $20,000 a year. At $600,000, it was $10,000 a year. So she lost $10,000 a year in taxes, and she'll be paying $10,000 a year extra in taxes for the next whatever period of time. So that's the problem. That's the threat that's happening right now is insurance and taxes. And the insurance companies are leaving the industry. They're leaving the state. Now, Ron DeSantis, your political beliefs, whatever, has passed some laws that are going to restrict the lawyers from suing the insurance companies. So I think the insurance companies will start coming back. And it's just like supply and demand. The more supply of insurance suppliers you have, the better your premiums are going to be. As the suppliers shrink and you have less insurance choices, you're going to pay more. So everybody watching right now, plan that when your insurance comes to renew, it's going to double, right? Mine did. Everybody I've talked to has. Jeff, has yours come to renew yet?
Got a renewal. Didn't go up that high, but did go up.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's real threats.
So, and once again, that's going to lead to people that don't have extra income going into default on their mortgage. And default on your mortgage 1 month, your credit gets dinged. 2 months, your credit gets dinged. 3 months, your credit's trashed. And now you got a Liz Pendens, which says we're going to foreclose on you. And then you need to call a real estate agent who can get your house sold for the most money. You're going to have to lose your house, but you're going to come out okay with cash in your pocket, but you're going to be a renter for a couple of years until you rebuild your credit.
Or you buy a house, or you take your equity and you buy a lower house or another house.
Yeah.
So just because your insurance doesn't mean you lose your house. Just means you might not be comfortable with that payment and say, you know what, I don't really feel like living in a flood zone anymore. It's up an extra $600 a month. I don't feel like doing that anymore. So then you buy a condo somewhere on the 3rd floor somewhere else, and you're good, right? So.
Well, that's happening too because the condo flood insurance on the water is going up. I mean, one of the condos here in town, their payments they're They'll go from $600 a month to $1,200 a month in the condo fees, just to cover the insurance increase. $1,200 a month in condo fees is a lot of money.
We'll do a whole nother topic on the condos because that's a big issue going on right now too.
Mm-hmm.
But, all right. Well, there you go.
We covered a lot today.
We had a lot of topics today, so thank you guys for watching, and we'll come back to you with what's going on, the up to date in real estate today.